Hello, welcome to History Chats for the second week here at the Marathon County Historical Society. So we're going to get started here. Thanks for bearing with us as we just kind of let some people join us. We're going to talk today with Gary. He's going to explain us a little bit about the rural schools in Marathon County and how that all existed. So I guess without further ado, let me just turn it over. Oh, actually, I suppose I should explain if you're new to this. So Gary's going to talk for about 10, 15 minutes or so, kind of giving the history. If you have any questions that you would like to, comments, questions, whatever you want to share with us, please feel free to do that. If you leave them in the chat, we will have some time for discussion after Gary's done. So please do that if you're interested in participating. We'd love to hear what you think. So I guess with that, Gary, I'll have you unmute and show your video again. Hopefully that works.
So taking a look at the map of Marathon County, the yellow dots indicate all one-room schoolhouses, pretty extensive throughout Marathon County. You can see a little bit of the geography, a little bit of the settlement of Marathon County by the number of yellow dots in certain towns. You can see that the north central, northwest part, as well as the western part of Marathon County, quite extensive one-room schoolhouses, a little bit lesser to the southeast. But that's pretty much the settlement of Marathon County as we know it. So that's why we see the yellow dots, the one-room schoolhouses as we see it. Each county had its own governance of the one-room schoolhouses as well as each town. So each town, Bergen, Maine, Berlin, they all were responsible for the governance of their one-room schoolhouses. So they all had their directors, they all had their superintendents. There was a Marathon County superintendent also, but it was all governed pretty much by the town where you lived in. So they determined where the schoolhouses were and to what extent these schoolhouses were built. So what we're going to be doing today is showing you a little bit of the one-room schoolhouses as what was happening, a little bit of the atmosphere of the school itself. Of course, every morning in this one-room schoolhouse there was the Pledge of Allegiance. So again, you can see the teacher as well as the range of ages of the youngsters from very small, maybe first grade, up to 7th or 8th grade. That was the extent of the kids coming into the classroom. I'm going to be showing some pictures of a variety of classes, and one of the more interesting pictures that the Historical Society has of this is this one. We don't know the school, but take a look. Barefoot boys. We are not quite sure why they were barefoot at this time. It doesn't look like it was that warm of a day, but sometimes they had to walk to the school in barefoot. Or another story is that sometimes they took off their shoes once they got to school because they had to save their shoes for church or whatever on the weekend. So, but also notice in this picture, one of the boys in the back is waiting for recess with his baseball bat. A typical classroom we see here, they're all pretty much the youngsters here in the front, and then the older students towards the back, the stove, the books, the teacher. This is the Lenrua School, 1925, one of the pictures here at the Historical Society. I want to talk a little bit about some of the more individual schools that we have here in Marathon County, and one of the more notable ones that still is around, that has quite a bit of a history, is the Spooner School. The Spooner School, town of Stettin, corner of High County Roads U and O, built in 1893. but it was moved in 1973 to Marathon Park. And with the cooperation of the Altrusa Club of Wausau and the Marathon County Historical Society, we created sort of a lab of what a one-room schoolhouse looks like. And these classes are still continuing, and really a good opportunity for young people to see what a one-room schoolhouse was like. So this is as part of this, our school classes at the one-room schoolhouse. This is pretty much the way the day was arranged. Penmanship. We'll talk a little bit about penmanship a little bit later, but the lunches, the geography, history, the spelling bees, the chores, all part of a day of classes in the one-room schoolhouse, as well as in all those one-room schoolhouses throughout Marathon County. Another important, I think, an important school in Marathon County is the Maple Grove School, built in 1904. This schoolhouse was built in 1904. The original one up in the town of Hamburg was built in the 1870s. Again, this originally it was a log cabin school. This is the 1904 school at this time, but then it is up in the town of Hamburg, up on what was all at one time County Road F. Now I believe it's County Road L, up in the town of Hamburg, one of the earlier schools. But it is since it's still here. One of the unusual stories of this school, the Maple Grove School, is that it's still here. In the 1950s, there were additions added to it, and it was made part of the Merrill school system. It is also noted for scholarships that people from Merrill have blessed the students from the Maple Grove School. Of course, the Fromm brothers were a key ingredient in providing the support through the years of this little Maple Grove School. Down the road a little bit to the east is what the Naugart School. It is in a little crossroads of Naugart, Berlin Road, and Naugart Road up in the town of Berlin. Up here, you can see it up. Let me go back a little bit. This is one of the more important stories here in Marathon County, because it was the home in the early days of the Pomeranian settlement in Marathon County. A lot of Pomeranian Germans came to this part of Marathon County, and they established this little schoolhouse. Earlier settlements in the 1850s, I think this school was the second school coming to this spot, I think in the early 1900s. We'll see a common denominator that a lot of the more modern schoolhouses came into being in the early 1900s. Last time I had a question about the Byron Valley Schoolhouse. This is the best picture that I could find of it. It's up in the town of Maine, built in 1919 of cement blocks, furnace, indoor toilets. I wish I had a better picture of this. If anyone out there has a better picture, or if it's still there, please let us know. We're kind of curious about this school up in the town of Maine. The first teacher was Viola Bricks. She was paid $70 a month to teach, and she taught German 1 hour a day. Closed in 1954 for part of the reorganization of schools in Marathon County. But an interesting part in this school, as well as several others, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, is the German language. The German This part of Marathon, town of Maine was heavily German, some Pomeranians, but they taught, they had time for the German language. This, if you notice on the bottom, this is published by Concordia Publishing. This was most likely used in some of the more church schools of Marathon County, but this gives you a little bit of a sense that indeed they were teaching German classroom, and this is what a German class textbook looked like. So you get a little bit of a sense of what German penmanship, German language, and German spelling started to take place. Byron Valley is way up in the town of Maine, up close to the Lincoln County border, way up there off of the Wisconsin River. The Rocky Ridge School on Rocky Ridge Road in the town of Maine has another unique story in that there weren't many Czech or Bohemian settlements in Marathon County, but this area of the town of Maine called Rocky Ridge was a Czech settlement. Like I said, not many Czech settlers, but this was a combination of Czech and German areas, and they came together into this Rocky Ridge School off of County Road B in the town of Mosinee. A bleak picture of the Trap School up in the town of Texas, off of the Trap River, built around the first schools were being built about 1873. This schoolhouse served the little city of Trap City, serving the Callan sawmill. It was remodeled later into this school, but again, pretty bleak, a small class, a very small community up there, but you can still see the class, the teacher and about 12 students or so in this little trap school up in Trap City. I mentioned also the Churchill School, also up in the town of Maine, up off Falcon Drive. Again, began in the 1890s and taught, this was another heavily German area. They were teaching German up until 1910. But of all the pictures of all the classes that we have in Marathon County, and before I forget, I wanted to acknowledge the Wausau Daily Record Herald, because in the late 40s, in the late 1940s, they took it upon themselves to document in their newspaper and through these photos, pretty much the extent of one-room schoolhouses in Marathon County, and we are fortunate to have those here at the Marathon County Historical Society. But take a look at the students. Some are pretty much pleased to be here. When the photographer showed up at this day, a variety of some of the students in their tie, little tie and sport coats, good. But you can sort of sense a sense of the demographics of the classroom. Not because I think when you start to see that in the older grades, maybe in the 8th grade, not too many boys. The boys may have had to been back on the farm helping the farm. A lot of girls, a lot of older girls, but the older boys may have been already back on the farm helping with chores back on the farm. A lot of boys and girls in the lower classes, of course. This must have been a fairly large class for that one teacher. So I think looking at the class, the smiles, and some of the faces on this class, you sort of get the sense that the teacher had her hands full. But it wasn't just the towns that were running and building schools. I want to talk a little bit about some of the villages. as the villages started to show and grow, especially towards the 1890s into the early 1900s, villages took upon themselves to build these rural schoolhouses for the villages. The Brokaw School, for instance, began in 1890. This 1900, I stand corrected. It was 1903 that this schoolhouse was built in Brokaw, built by the Wausau Papers. The big paper mill has started to come into Brokaw, starting their mill, and they had a sense that they had to start educating their young people in this company town. So this schoolhouse in Brokaw was built in 1903. It closed in 1962. Schofield also took it upon, the Schofield story is a little bit more extensive. This is the first school. We don't have an exact date of when this was built. This was they all pretty much were in the same spot on Grand Avenue at Schofield. And then the later school, the next school was in the 1920s. It burnt in the 1920s, Schofield's first brick. And then later on, after that schoolhouse burnt, then the schoolhouse that we know now and being now turned into apartments up off of Grand Avenue in Schofield. Marathon City, 1908 Marathon City School, they built their schoolhouse, pretty much 8 grades, 2 teachers, 4 rooms in Marathon City. In Spencer, we see a little bit of a change in Spencer because this is the people in Spencer took it upon themselves in 1915 when this school was built to have all 12 grades. So now they are in a high school. They built a high school just like Wausau built its own high school in 1898. Spencer took it upon themselves to build this school in 1915, which had all 12 grades, including a high school. Served the community until 1951. And just a few shots of some of the other schools that some of the other villages took it upon themselves to build. Here's Edgar and Colby, and then an inside shot of the Colby High School, Assembly Hall. Again, pretty much a routine. Notice they must have known the photographer was coming. They're in their ties and sport coats and suits, and the teachers there in the back. So with that, I sort of give you a little bit of a quick tour of rural schools in Marathon County. I just want to highlight next week's, we're going to be talking about church schools in Marathon County, which leads me to talk at that time about St. John's in the town of Easton, one of the early church schools in Marathon County taken upon themselves to build this little one-room schoolhouse up on Z, up over in the town of Easton. So with that, if there's any questions, let Ben know and we'll try to take those at this time. Otherwise, feel free to write your comments and we'll try to answer those questions as they do come in. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, great. So I think if you, let's see, if I just do that and then I stop. Great. All right, I think that gets us back to, hey, all right. Yeah, thanks for that interesting sort of overview of the history of the schools. Like Gary said, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. If we don't, even if you're watching this after the fact, we'll try to get back and answer them as best we can. It'd be interesting to know what people want to know. I know one question that was asked, June asked, and you talked about a little bit about this, about English or German in schools. Do you have a sense of, how long they were speaking German, or, because I would assume that's probably early, right?
Well, I think depending on the school and depending on maybe the town, it depended. Some schools stopped teaching German around World War I. Others, I think, carried on even after World War I into the, I don't think it would have went well into the 30s or 40s, but I think that World War I era, 1910, seems to have been a common time when they stopped teaching German.
All right, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sorry, there's a little bit of an echo. We are in the same room, so you're getting a little bit of both of us here. Well, I guess if anybody has any other questions, if you put them in, I guess I can take this opportunity to let you know about some other stuff that's coming up. If you're still kind of figuring out or typing out things, we actually have some other events coming up pretty soon here. For example, this weekend on Saturday, we're going to be talking about women's suffrage. So if you're interested in, so we're going to be talking about the suffrage movement in Marathon County. So this will be a sort of a more in-depth discussion about the history of that topic, and it'd be a good time. We're finding a lot of really interesting stories here in Marathon County that we don't usually talk about. So I'm excited to share that stuff with you at that point. Also, I want to just mention that we are doing these sort of streams with our friends at the public library, the Marathon County Public Library, and they have some interesting stuff coming up. Actually, they've got interesting programs all the time, but in particular, they have the Wisconsin Book Festivals coming up later in September. So this will be an interesting week-long event of guests. It's all going to be digital, so it'll be interviews and roundtables and discussions with people in literature. So if you're interested in any of that, check out the website with the schedule, or I'm sure here on Facebook or YouTube there'll be things up there as well. So I guess if you're interested in more of this sort of digital stuff that you want to learn about, there's stuff coming up. So I guess I'll just check here if there are any other. I think I'm still, yeah. Great. Any other questions out here? Let's see. Christine asked. Let's see. Christine Martins asked if there's a diploma that says a person received it in 1925. It's from the Marathon County Schools. Would that be a grade school? Probably not a high school. Like, at what point would you get a diploma?
I think they were graduate. I think at 8th grade there was some graduation, especially from perhaps a one-room schoolhouse. I think that there would have been a sense that for a lot of children, 8th grades was the last grade officially, unless they would move on to a high school. But usually, sometimes those graduations would be after the 8th grade.
Yeah, cool. Well, it looks like that's the questions that have been asked at this point, and we are kind of getting close to 1 o'clock, as want to let people get back to their lives or whatever. So, like Gary mentioned at the end of his talk, we will be discussing some other more school things coming up next week. Again, same time here at 12:30 on Thursday. So have to come back and join us for that. And yeah, we'll call it there. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.